Hello there, it's Mr. Vini talking about the Roman Republic today. Now to talk about the Roman Republic, let's talk about Rome's government. It's important to know Rome had two classes. You had the upper class that were called the patricians, and they made up about 10% of the population, or 1 out of 10 people, and you had the lower class, which were called the plebeians. They made up about 90% of the population, or 9 out of 10 people, and they included farmers, artisans, and shopkeepers. Now, each group did have the right to vote, however, plebeians could not hold public office. So let's take a look at how this all worked. Right? It's important to understand that Rome had a three-part government. They had one group that made the laws, one group that ran the government, and one group that acted as judges. Now, one of those groups was called the consuls, and there was 2 of them. They were patricians. They were chosen every year, and they're the ones that ran the government and they ran the army. They had the power to veto or say no to, so any law that was made, the 2 consuls had to agree on. Then they had a lawmaking body. This was the Senate, made up of about 300 people who served for life. And so it was a little different. The consuls were elected every year. The Senate, once you became a senator, you were a senator for life. And then the plebeians, they complained about their lack of involvement. So eventually the Council of Plebs was created, and they were elected a patrician who was called a tribune. And this person was the voice in government for the plebeians. Now let's talk a little bit about a famous guy by the name of Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus was a Roman farmer. He's best known as an early Roman dictator who served during a great danger. And at the time, the Republic, when it went along, it had what was called a dictator. And in times of war or crisis, they would put a dictator in place, and the rest of the government would not be there, and he would do what needed to be done to solve the situation or the problem, and then he would leave and it'd go back to running the Republic. So Cincinnatus is famous because he gave up the power after the danger had passed, and this was a strong belief in civic duty. Let's talk a little bit about Roman law. Roman law was first written down on what was called the 12 Tables, and this was the first code of law for Romans. It was created around 451 BC. It was written on 12 bronze tablets, and then it was placed in the Forum where everyone could see it. The laws only applied to Roman citizens, however. So they created a law of nations that applied to the entire empire. Now, the Romans gave us our idea of the legal system we use today in the United States. So a lot of the United States law is based on what was found in those 12 tables. All right. Now, over time, Rome expands. Carthage was probably the most powerful rival to Rome. They ended up fighting a war between Rome and Carthage. They actually fought 3 different ones called the Punic Wars. The first Punic War started over the island of Sicily. Rome wanted Sicily because of the granaries that were there, and Rome ends up winning. The second Punic War, which is probably the most famous of the 3, had a general for Carthage named Hannibal, and he marched with elephants over the Alps mountains down into Italy and spent 14 years just roaming around the countryside of Italy, terrifying people. Finally, it was, they were defeated, and Rome wins that one. And then there was one other war, and it was one where Rome ends up winning that also, and they rule the Mediterranean Sea after this. So that's how kind of Rome expands. The Punic Wars were the big one, fought between Rome and Carthage, and in all 3 of them, Rome ends up winning and gaining more and more territory. It's a little bit about the Roman Republic. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in class.